The grand ballroom of the Harrington estate glittered with crystal chandeliers, expensive paintings, and wealthy guests dressed in designer clothes. Everyone had gathered to celebrate the 28th birthday of Victoria Harrington, the only daughter of billionaire businessman Richard Harrington. Richard had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving behind a massive fortune, several companies, and a mansion filled with priceless possessions. Victoria had inherited everything, but unlike her father, she cared little about hard work or kindness. She enjoyed luxury, attention, and reminding people that she was richer than everyone around her. That evening, she noticed Marcus Reed, the estate's quiet black janitor, cleaning a spill near the entrance. Marcus had worked for the Harrington family for almost 20 years. He had known Richard well and had remained loyal to the family even after Richard's death. He was humble, hard-working, and rarely spoke about his personal life. Victoria walked toward him with a glass of champagne in her hand. "Marcus," she said loudly, making sure the nearby guests could hear. "You've worked here long enough. I think it's time I finally gave you something valuable." Marcus looked up politely. "That's very kind of you, Miss Victoria, but I don't need anything." "Oh, you'll want this," she replied with a smile. She pointed through the large glass doors toward an old, rusty car parked beside the mansion's storage building. The car was covered in dust. Its paint had faded, its tires were flat, and rust covered parts of the metal. It looked like it had not moved in decades. "My father loved keeping useless things," Victoria said. "That old car has been sitting there forever. Take it. Consider it a gift." Several guests laughed. One man whispered, "He'll probably spend more repairing it than it's worth." Marcus looked at the car silently. Then something changed in his expression. He slowly walked outside and placed his hand on the dusty hood. Beneath the dirt, he noticed a small symbol engraved near the front grille. His eyes widened. "Where did Mr. Harrington keep the keys?" Marcus asked. Victoria shrugged. "Who cares? They're probably somewhere in the garage." Marcus did not answer. He went to the storage room and searched through old boxes. After several minutes, he found a small wooden case hidden behind some shelves. Inside was an old silver key. He returned to the car and unlocked the driver's door. The guests followed him outside, curious to see why the janitor was taking the joke so seriously. Victoria crossed her arms. "What are you doing?" "You actually think that piece of junk is special?" Marcus carefully sat inside. The interior was old, but surprisingly well preserved. He looked beneath the steering wheel and found a small metal plate. Engraved on it were the words Harrington Prototype No. 1, 1962. Marcus became completely silent. Years earlier, before becoming a janitor, Marcus had studied mechanical engineering. He had once worked for a small automobile restoration company. He knew classic cars well, but this was different. This was not an ordinary vehicle. It was one of the first experimental cars created by the legendary engineer Daniel Voss. Only 3 prototypes had ever been built, and experts believed all of them had been destroyed. Marcus remembered reading about the missing prototype in an old automotive magazine. If this car was authentic, it could be worth millions. But Marcus said nothing. He closed the door and looked at Victoria. "Thank you for the gift," he said calmly. Victoria laughed. "You're welcome. Just don't ask me to pay for the repairs." Marcus drove the car away the next morning after spending several hours repairing the engine. To everyone's surprise, the old vehicle started. The mansion's staff watched as the rusty car slowly left the estate. Victoria recorded a short video and posted it online. "Today I gave our janitor my father's old junk car," she said while laughing. Some people are happy with very hours. The video spread across social media. Thousands of people criticized Victoria for humiliating Marcus, but Victoria did not care. 3 days later, Marcus visited a respected automobile historian named Professor Samuel Grant. The professor examined the vehicle carefully. He checked the engine number, the metal plate, and several hidden markings. Then his hands began to shake. "Mr. Reed," he whispered. "Do you understand what you have?" Marcus nodded slowly. "I have an idea." "This is the Lost Voss prototype," the professor said. "The only surviving model in the world." Marcus stared at the car. Professor Grant continued, "Collectors have searched for this vehicle for decades. If it is restored properly, it could be worth more than $25 million. News of the discovery spread quickly. Reporters arrived outside Marcus's small home. Automobile collectors offered enormous amounts of money. One private buyer offered $20 million without even seeing the completed restoration. Marcus refused. "I want to know why Richard Harrington kept this car," he said. A week later, Marcus returned to the Harrington estate. Victoria was standing in the entrance hall when she saw him, so she said sarcastically, "Did you sell my junk car for a few $100s?" Marcus placed an old envelope on the table. "I found this hidden inside the driver's seat," he said. Victoria opened it. Inside was a letter written by her father. Her hands began to shake as she read. The letter explained that Richard had purchased the prototype decades earlier from Daniel Voss. The car had once belonged to Richard's closest friend, who had died in an accident. Richard had promised to protect it until he found someone trustworthy enough to receive it. The letter ended with one final message. "If Marcus Reed ever finds this car, give it to him. He understands its value, not because of money, but because he understands loyalty, history, and hard work." Victoria stared at Marcus. "You knew?" she asked. "No," Marcus replied. "I had no idea your father wrote that." "But why would he choose you?" Marcus looked toward the old portrait of Richard hanging above the fireplace. "Because your father knew who stood beside him when he had nothing." Victoria's face turned pale. Marcus explained that before Richard became a billionaire, he had struggled to build his first company. Marcus had helped him repair machinery, worked long hours without pay, and supported him when others abandoned him. Richard had never forgotten. Victoria had grown up surrounded by wealth and had never known that part of her father's life. Tears filled her eyes. "I treated you like you were nothing," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "You did." "I'm sorry." Marcus remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "An apology matters when it changes someone." The story became national news. Headlines revealed that the rusty junk car was worth more than $25 million. Victoria's video was shared again, but this time people criticized her arrogance. She publicly apologized to Marcus and admitted that she had used her wealth to humiliate someone who had been loyal to her family for decades. But Marcus made an unexpected decision. He sold the car at a private auction for $25 million. Then he used part of the money to create the Richard Harrington Foundation, which provided scholarships and technical education for young people from poor communities. He also opened a free training center for students interested in engineering and automobile restoration. Victoria offered to donate money to the foundation. Marcus accepted, but only after she agreed to work at the center every week. "You want me to work there?" she asked. "Yes," Marcus replied. "Not as the owner, as a volunteer." For the first time in her life, Victoria agreed to serve people without expecting attention or praise. Months later, she stood beside Marcus as students repaired old engines and learned new skills. "I used to think value came from money," Victoria said. Marcus smiled. "And now I know that the most valuable things are loyalty, kindness, and the people we choose to respect." Marcus looked at the students and nodded. The rusty car had been worth $25 million, but the lesson it taught Victoria was worth far more. And while the billionaire heiress had given the car away as a cruel joke, the quiet janitor turned her humiliation into hope for thousands of people.